Hello, hello. Welcome to Healthy Perspectives, a podcast that takes on current cultural and social issues through a clinical lens. Hello, hello. All right. Welcome back. Thank you for those of you who are joining us for the first time. I have been getting a good number of first-time listeners lately, and you're welcome. You're definitely welcome here. We Look, it's been a while since I've talked about it. I would just hit it real briefly. We try to take current cultural and social issues and bring a clinical lens to them. So this is supposed to be, by design, supposed to be a developmental podcast of sorts. I do put in some opinions, not a ton, but I do put in some opinions. Most of what I'm trying to do in here is help people gather ways of going about doing things more so than telling you what you're supposed to do or think. That way they can practice making better, healthier decisions in their own lives. So that is a big part of the objective. And today we're going to do just that. There is Fauci is in the media spotlight again, which frankly, I'm kind of tired of, but it does bring up something that we definitely should address. I am a social science guy. Research sounds stupid. I'm going to say it out loud though. I enjoy the research process. And there's what we call backward science or bad science. Today, I'm going to bore you probably with a little bit of a lesson there. But my hope here is that this critical concept, this absolutely essential concept, is something that you will grasp. If you do, we all win. Your tip of the day today: order matters in a lot of things. Order matters in a lot of things. Order, like the order in which you do something, matters in a lot of things. So there's this guy named Dr. Michael, Shringa, I believe is how you say it. He's a psychiatrist and a researcher. And he was recently on the Cultural Apothecary podcast. And I was referred to this by a client, and it was interesting. They were like, they were more or less saying, is this guy a whack job, or is what he's saying legit? And he brings up some really interesting things that I want to highlight. He suggested that the body does not keep the score. So for those of you who've ever been in therapy, if you've ever worked on trauma work, almost every therapist I know today talks about the body keeps the score in some form or another. Okay. It is a central book by Dr. Vanderkolk that has been turned into thousands of trainings that people can take as professionals in the field. And when he wrote that book, the concept of stored trauma has just become understood. It's like accepted and understood by professionals and the general population. So that's why most people have heard about it. But what if the theory is based in bad science? Now, I started with Fauci. I'll come back to him. But understand, bad science or backward science, which is bad science, can come from anywhere. And if you're not paying attention, you will be a fool and follow bad science. That's just the way it's going to work. because it's very deceptive. Matter of fact, bad science can even on occasion turn out to be true, but it's by accident. It's not on purpose. So can bad science still tell us the truth? Yes, it can. But understand that isn't okay. Like, it's fine if we get to the truth eventually. I'm good with that. But in this good science example, or bad science example, how you get there, order matters. Order matters, because otherwise, look, you've all heard me use the analogy that if you're 3 degrees off of a moral reality, moral truth, an absolute 3 degrees off, not even a massive amount, but you travel down that pathway for 1, 5, 10, 40 years, you end up with distortions from reality that are absolutely ridiculous. It's how we have conversations about what is a woman. What? Like, that is the easiest thing in the world. It should be, at least. But we get 3 degrees off, and we travel and we travel and we travel and we travel. And pretty soon we are thousands of miles from reality. 3 degrees, not even a ton, but 3 degrees over time makes a massive difference in how we engage and encounter the world around us. Okay. So, first question: what is good science? If we're going to know what backward or bad science is, we have to know what good science is. As a social science guy, unfortunately, a lot of people in my profession do not understand the basic scientific concept. That sounds really stupid. I know how that sounds on the other end. And social science does not do oftentimes a good job unless you get into research, data, and all of that kind of stuff. That one section. But in terms of the practically applied clinical counseling, psychiatrist, research is not necessarily the focal point for a lot of professionals. So they read the research, but to understand how it works, most programs make you take one statistics class in graduate school. One. What? One. Now, as a stat guy, an undergrad, I was in mathematics. I think that's absurd. Because how in the world are you going to assess good research versus bad research? In my profession, frankly, most people can't. So we are dependent on others who think they can or actually can to produce what we need, and then we're depending on luck to be able to interpret. And that's just dumb. Okay, so good science starts with a question, then goes to research. Has somebody already answered or asked this question? What did they find? Then it goes to a hypothesis. Well, I found a little bit of research that's closely affiliated, but not enough to answer the actual question that I have. So I form a hypothesis. I think this might happen if we do this. Okay. Hypothesis. Then we run an experiment. Okay. Then we collect the data and draw conclusions. And then we report results. It's that simple, in that order. It's question, research, hypothesis, experiment, data and conclusions, and report. It's not report what you want, it's report what occurred. Well, in statistics, it's not what you show, it's not what you, it's not what you show, it's what you cover. That's why I had a stat guy. When I was in undergrad, I was a young guy. Uh, there was a stat professor who said, it's like a bikini. It's not what you reveal, it's what's being covered. And statistics are like that. And frankly, a lot of people in science try to cover the things that they don't want you to see, because those would be the things that raise doubt. So if we're reading research, we have to be saying, what are they not telling me? Always ask, what are they not telling me? If you're not asking that question, you will succumb to backward or bad science, and you will be the idiot in the room. What are they not telling me? Okay. So most typical bad science looks more like this. They cherry pick experiments. It creates data that isn't repeatable under less than perfect conditions. That's specific to the social science field. Because in a chemistry field, they're creating the perfect conditions on purpose, and then they're trying to find ways to create the more perfect conditions in a more natural setting afterwards. But in social science, we get imperfect conditions all the time in all of our research. We cannot actually create perfect conditions. Okay. So creates data that isn't repeatable under less than perfect conditions, meaning they created an unrealistic environment. Okay. Number 3 is it leaves out facts on purpose. Those are the most typical bad science approaches. So people often want or need to, if they're a narcissist, be right. They want to or need to be right. When educated people of science get to this spot, they have a trick that they use. And I'm going to tell you what that trick is. Okay. That's really this is the core of today's podcast. When you have somebody who has spent 5 or 10 years to try to support their hypothesis because they want to be right, and it turns out that they're not quite right, they then have to acknowledge and wrestle with the idea that 5 to 10 years was not the best use of their time, energy, and resources. And for some people, that's too much to swallow. And so what they do is they say, well, how can I tell you the a truth instead of the truth about the science? And so they use this trick. They change the order. They start with results they want. Remember, that is not in good science. You can create a hypothesis, the results I might expect, and then you prove it right or wrong. But when they start with the results they want, like Dr. Vanderkolk did, they can create a question that they can ask that will lead to the result that they want. That's backwards. It changes the right question to the wrong question. And this often comes through cherry-picked science. Cherry-picked science. They'll go out there and they'll find good science and they'll cherry pick. They'll be like, well, this one doesn't quite fit what I want. And they'll say, I'm not going to give that to my audience. This one fits right next to what I want, and it tells me the result I want. You notice how that's a bad problem right there? Because what I'm doing is seeking to justify my already preconceived ideas. That is not science. Then they set up an experiment to get data. And because the question is framed to create a specific answer already, they use the answer to generalize, possibly inaccurately, just slightly off of what they knew the data was going to give them because the other research already told them to a degree, in order to get you closer to their desired outcome. And that, my friends, is backwards or bad science. They change the order to manipulate the outcomes. They leave things out and they cherry pick. Order matters, folks. There's a lot of things that order matters in. Now, you might say, well, I don't know. It could still produce good results. Maybe, but it's actually not producing results. What it's doing is confirming a bias, and sometimes their bias is accurate. And if they would do good science, we would have better results. We would know more about what we're actually talking about. So with the body keeps the score, when I talked about Dr. Scheringa, what he suggested is it was cherry-picked data. You can go listen to it. It's out there. It's on the Cultural Apothecary podcast. I'm pretty sure I said that already, but that's where it's at. You can go listen to it and you can understand. Now, here's the interesting part. That doesn't mean Dr. van der Kolk is wrong. It just means his science isn't good science. He cherry-picked some things to create an image that he wanted to create for us. And he still may pan out to be right at some point, but not until we have good science. Right now, we just have people's best guess. That's not science. It might be the beginning of science, but it's not science. It's not the way it ought to work. So, to prove my point that order matters, I'm going to go with some very basic things. Let's go to the most basic example. You're cooking. And so you gather all the ingredients and you put them in a pile. You throw them in the oven. What's going to happen? You're not going to have the product that you're looking for, right? You have to mix, and sometimes you have to mix in certain orders and certain quantities. If you don't mix them, but you put them in the oven to see what happens, that's bad science. Well, I take that back. Maybe it's not bad science. Maybe it's the first step in science. And you're like, well, I put them all on the pan and they came out, these things came out burnt, these things didn't. But when I mixed them up, these things came out with a different consistency. Holy smokes, beginning of science. But if you just don't mix things and you just stick them in the oven, there's a good chance that's bad science. You're supposed to mix them first, put them in second, right? Order matters. Love and transactions. Love has to come before transactions. Anything other than that is not love. It's earned affection. It's earned loyalty. It's earned whatever. Love doesn't work like that. Love isn't earned. It's a choice for the giver. If I choose to love you, then you're lovable, whether you want to be or not. That's how love works. It's an offer and an accept. If I put the transactions before the offer, then it's an earn offer and then accept. And that changes everything. That's why some people don't believe there is unconditional love. They think I've always had to earn affection from somebody. I can't just be given it freely. But that's not love. All right. Order matters. How about a diagnosis? What if you came to my office and I diagnosed you before I assessed? What if I you know what? You look like you have borderline personality disorder. Yep. I'm going to go with that. And then we'll see where this takes us. That's absurd. Order matters. Assess first, diagnose next. Not the other way around. Otherwise, I treat you for something and it's not even something you deal with. That's stupid. Well, it had this component, right? Yeah, I got lucky. That's a bad way to approach things because that's bad science. That's backward science. So here's the relevance. With Fauci, with the body keeps the score, with other things, we have to pay attention to the order in which we do things. It matters. It absolutely matters. And if people change the order up, if you're not going to be an idiot, you have to ask the question, why are they changing the order? Is it because that has been done backwards by everybody else, which could be the case? Or are they trying to cover something up? They're putting their bikini or their shorts on to try to cover up what they don't want you to see. And that is that they don't know what they claim to know. And usually that's what it is. In scholarly work, the bias is toward being right. Scholars like to be right. That is a big part of the downfall of why science ends up being bad science. They spend years, oftentimes decades sometimes, trying to make a case only to find out that they were wrong. And if they would just realize that spending that time, energy, and resources to be wrong is as beneficial as being right, they would give up bad science. Because when we know something is wrong, that is hugely helpful. When you know that your anger is destructive, that's hugely helpful. Oh my gosh, now you can decide to do something different. Okay, folks, this was a little more academic in its approach. I hope this helps, though. Please, as you're listening to these different social medias, as you're looking at different kinds of research, if you're in grad school, ask these questions. Is the science being done correctly? If it's not good science, folks. And you should point at it and you should say, how did he say it? Arnold Schwarzenegger said, it was in Kindergarten Cop. The kids are like, stranger danger, stranger danger, stranger danger. When you see bad science, you should say bad science, bad science, bad science. And with that, folks, I hope you have a wonderful day. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. We appreciate our audience a lot, so we give you some simple ways to track us down. Please like, subscribe, and follow all the podcasts on different platforms, but you can also email us at healthyperspectives@protonmail.com, or you can check out our website at healthy-perspectives.com/podcast. It's a backward slash. So if you want to go to our landing page, if you go to healthy-perspectives.com, you'll still find us. You just got to click on the podcast button. Thank you so much.